I don't think anyone should bulk because I don't think anyone should look like they're out of shape. And that's why
Right.
I take when I say bulk, that reminds me of someone like you're just big and bulky, right? You still want to look kind of chiseled.
And there really is no right one way to diet. Like I'll have diet pops every day. I have 6 a day. And that works for me. And if somebody else, they'll tell me, I'll drink a diet pop and then I just crave that and I just can't and I want ice cream. And I'm like, well, geez, if I had that problem, I certainly wouldn't do it either. So there's no perfect diet. But is there for you, like for you personally, is there a diet that works the best? And I mean, you've kind of touched on it here, but do you like feel like keto is bad or would it be good or carnivore or intermittent fasting? Or is it just spread your meals out and just do what's worked and never stray?
Hard for me to speak on keto or intermittent fasting because I've never done it. If you would have asked me, 15 years ago, I would have said it's the dumbest thing I ever heard, right? But people do have success on it. I mean, I never was a fat dieter, so keto for me just didn't make sense because Chris's thing was like, hey, we're going to eat as little of fat as possible. So a diet that I would eat would, like I mentioned, I didn't even have red meat often in my contest diet. It was mostly white fish, egg whites, some chicken breasts, some protein powders. Yes, I dieted on protein powders. And that was it. I didn't even add essential fats in there, which today I do. And I actually eat more fat in my diet round now because I eat a lot less. And I think because I was eating so much carbs and proteins, it really wasn't necessary for the fats. I mean, people say, well, what about your joints or, your HDL or whatever? And listen, I always had a lower HDL than what I should have. And probably that was from the testosterone. But, I was always looking at, trying to get as least amount of calories from fat calories and just focus on the carbs and proteins. So when I got a diet sent over from Chris Aceto, and his diets are the easiest things ever, he literally would say meal one, 50p, which 50 protein. And then carbs would be like 75c. That's all he would write me. He didn't say, he didn't tell me, okay, eat these kind of foods, take these supplements with it. It was like meal 1 through 6, and that's it. And I ate every 2.5 hours. I found that was my window. I spaced everything. I suggest every 3 hours. And I suggest any person that's usually on a standard time that they stay awake should be eating at least 6 meals a day, right? I would say I ate up to 7. I ate up to 10, to be honest, when I was trying to really bulk up. But I was only hungry for about 3 or 4 of those 6 to 8 meals a day, probably.
Now I'm interested in this. You're saying you highly recommend 6 meals plus. Now I'm going to give you the opposite view. If I eat 6 meals plus, which I've done, every time I start eating, I have a hard time to stop eating. So when I eat more meals, like 6, 7, 8 meals a day, I found that it's very difficult for me to stay within my calorie range versus if I eat 5 meals a day or sometimes only 4, I'm going a longer time without eating, but I can eat more at each meal and it allows me to feel full and I find it easier to stop. So in my own experience, I've been more successful with 4 to 5 meals a day. And this includes contest prep dieting, like for a show, versus eating 6, 7, 8 meals. And I've tried both. And so do you find that it's no problem? You can stop eating that meal. You're good. Like, how is your appetite?
I always walked away from each meal where I probably could have eaten more, even though I was a high carb eater. And, that's not how I started necessarily. It's as I got more muscle and obviously, I was enhanced, right? So I was eating even on a contest diet, Greg, like up to 1,000 carbs a day. I mean, my low carb day was 400 grams of carbs a day. I kept my protein moderate. So, I was close to 300 pounds. I always tried to take in around 300 grams of protein a day. But when I go up to 1,000 carbs, I probably back that down to 200 grams of protein a day. So when bodybuilders sit there and say, I have 10,000 calories a day, they're full of shit, unless they're eating McDonald's or whatever else. Like even someone like me, Olympia caliper, I was eating, 5,000 calories, somewhere around there, 6,000 some days, depending. But my carbohydrates were always a lot higher than my protein, even on contest prep, as I got deeper into my career. Not in the very beginning when I dieted for Teen Nationals and, the Tournament of Champions and then the Nationals, like I had to cut carbs for my last couple meals. Like that's how I would do it, but I was still training twice a day. So I think when we talk about you ate 4 meals and able to space them out. Like I was training twice a day a lot of my career. So I had a certain window where I had to get the meals in an hour before working out and an hour after. So that made me follow the 6 meal a day plan, if it makes sense, because I was spending 2 different sessions in the gym. So I had to eat an hour before, an hour after, and then go an hour before the next workout and an hour after. That's 4 meals right there, plus my breakfast. And then of course, something before I went to bed. So that's how I kind of set up my 6 meals a day based on how Chris had me working with my training programs.
Yeah, it makes total sense. If you're in the gym twice a day, then you're burning a lot more calories. You're gonna have to eat more meals to fuel each workout. And you're just thinking about like, I don't want to eat a huge meal and have a full stomach and have to go and train at the gym. It just wouldn't make sense. So spreading it out for that does make a lot of sense. And so you said in your off season, like you're 300 pounds, about 5'9" off season, and you're quite lean. What would you say you're at 12% off season at 300? Like, for Mr. Olympia off season, 10 to 12%, or
I would say 12, 15. I mean, when you're a bigger body weight, and listen, there's some confusion on how people measure their body fat. I never went into a dunk tank and said, okay, if you ask me, okay, what were you clipped at a week out from the Olympia or Arnold Classic victories? I was 3% on calipers, but how accurate is that? I don't really know. If you were to measure me,
it's usually within 1 or 2%. So if you're 3, it probably was 5 or less, regardless. I mean, you are winning Olympia. You have to be close to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say now, Greg. I mean, I'm 12 to 15%, and I'm pretty lean. But I haven't seen your physique right now, but I would have guessed that you were under 10% just from. Yeah. I would have guessed that, but I mean, maybe, but I don't. I think I did my body fat testing. I was with Hani Rambod like 2 months ago, and we did this machine where I don't know how accurate it is. You stand on it. Oh yeah. And it was like, it said I was 15%. I was pretty disappointed.
I went on one of those a week out from a show. I had strided glutes and everything, and I was 17%. Yeah. What is this? Another guy got in there, no abs, and he had 11%. And I was like, what is this machine? It's just bullshit. So
I mean, I'm pretty cut up, but I'm only 230 now, comparable. But I would say, listen, 12. Yeah, definitely 12%. I was guest posing. I always had abs and my quads were still striated. I just held more of my body fat, like my hamstrings, glutes, lower back a little bit. But listen, I could diet for 3-4 weeks, 16 weeks off in the Olympia, and I was already lean going 12 weeks down. I mean, I could do photo shoots and whatnot then.
And so speaking of like bulking and cutting, like, so for a bodybuilder, obviously you can't compete at 3-5%. You can't stay there year round. So you obviously have to bulk, but like your off season, you're at 12, maybe 15% tops. Now, if somebody was not a bodybuilder, they're just an average person that wants to put on some muscle, they're 20 years old, 25, whatever. And say they're already at 20, 25% body fat, not fat, maybe had a little outline of abs. Would you tell that person they should probably bulk up and then cut later? Or would you tell them to keep their body fat the same and try to build muscle from there? Or maybe should they diet down first to get to say 15, that healthy range, and then try to pack on muscle, or do it all at the same time? Like what should they do?
The suggestion I would, and remember, these are my opinions. You're asking me this.
Absolutely.
I would lean them down some, because that's going to help with the metabolism. It's always easier to feed a lean body and build up than it is to, try to build up on a so not so lean body. You're only going to tend to put on body fat in the areas that you hold. But if you, like, a person rebounds from competition, it's the best time to take advantage. But if someone's just an average person, never competed, I would put them on some sort of a so diet that was similar to like someone dieted for a competition, get their body fat down to, 10% or whatever, where they're like really lean, and then add the calories in on a slower schedule, meaning like their harder training days, the calories would bump up. I wouldn't do it I wouldn't just add calories every single day. I would pick certain days, back down on the days off. So I had kind of like I mentioned, the zigzag approach where the calories fluctuate, where it's not always the same. That way they can progress, but not have to worry about putting on too much body fat.
Now, I wonder if your opinion on this, I've been criticized heavily for this. I've been telling a lot of people, I have this thing I've been saying, it's to main gain. And what I do is I preach people that wherever you are right now, you should either, if your body fat is really low, you should eat more food until you're at what I call a healthy body fat percentage. And for men, I say that's around 15%. for most men, and for women around 25%. If you're at 25%, I say you should slowly cut your calories down until you get to that 15. And as long as it's healthy for you, because I know not all people can feel good and healthy at 15%, and then try to build muscle from there. And if you're already at, say, 15%, well, you're doing it right. Just build muscle from there. What do you think of that? That's main gaining versus bulk for like 3 months and then cut or do a mini cut and then bulk up again and add the surplus calories and cut and fluctuate back and forth. Like, my belief is, let's keep body fat pretty much the same all the time, and let's just build some muscle and go from there.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, and I get scared of the word bulk, Greg. It scares me a lot because as a bodybuilder, we use the term pre-contest and off season, right? I don't think anyone should bulk because I don't think anyone should look like they're out of shape. And that's why I take, when I say bulk, that reminds me of someone like you're just big and bulky, right? You still want to look kind of chiseled. So, everyone, I hate using percentage of body fats because we have to go by the mirror. So when you say, well, what's your percentage of body fat? I'll be honest, I never checked myself in the off season. So it's really hard. I'd be lying if I told you I was 12% or whatever, because I don't really know. I just judge by the mirror. And if I was in reasonable shape enough to look like a bodybuilder. But for me, I would definitely, like, you're still coming to pull back, like I said, to start, bringing your body weight up. And then of course, eating to the point where, you have to monitor yourself. So whether you're taking pictures each week, and that's the only way to really judge. You're not going to be able to say, well, I'm gaining mass just by the scale, because it's kind of doesn't tell the story if you're putting on muscle mass at the same time. I mean, you can gain muscle and get lean at the same time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I've done many videos. People argue to death with me that you can. I'm like, yes, you can.
And you can do that. And you can do it on restricted calories, Greg, because if you're taking in, meal timing the meals the proper way and taking those calories at the right time, you can advance that way. So listen, I wouldn't go against what you say. Would I do it a little different? Maybe I would have the person come down a little more to be a lean body weight just because of metabolism. And it's the same thing with doing cardiovascular work. Like, people say, I want to burn this amount of calories while I'm on a treadmill bike, and it tells me I'm burning this much. But that's absolutely wrong, because that machine, everyone's metabolism is different. And you should be focusing on keeping the body burning rather than I'm trying to lose X amount of calories by doing this bike work or treadmill or stair mill at that point.